I don't really care like that. I mean, who need to judge, to be honest? But sure. 1 second. Let me. Uh, mm, should I use the argument? Should I use the argument? I don't know. I don't know. Well, you'll use Prime Garp? Bah! Yo, Manny, you'll use Prime Garp?
Hello, hello, hello.
Yo, what's good?
Were you quiet that whole time, or were you talking, or my audio just
I
cut
was
out?
I was talking, bro.
Oh yeah, my audio just cut out. What'd you say?
Yeah. Are you taking Prime Garp?
Sure.
All right. So, uh, which RX should I use? I'll just use this one. Okay. Uh, so 1 second. Hmm.
Bullet.
Uh,
Five. Oh, okay. Uh,
okay. So, uh, basically, since Prime Garp would be considered an obstacle to Akainu, he would be able to be melted. Therefore, Akainu wins.
Okay, you can show me that.
All right. So, bro, your aura is too much, bro.
What'd you say?
Your aura is too much, bro. I'm shaking to the screen.
Bro, you're good, bro. Just relax, man.
Okay. Here's the thing. So it's from a VV card. Uh, I'll send it in chat.
All right.
Hmm. And since uh
I
Prime
believe
Garp would
I
be
can.
considered an obstacle, he would be able to be melted, and yeah, so Akainu wins.
The magma body can melt any obstacle and move. Can melt any obstacle and move. Once the magma body can melt any obstacle and move, it can fly for a short period of time by spewing magma. So when it says that it can melt any obstacle, you're saying that hypothetically, under the assumption that our characters battle, they'd be seen as an obstacle, therefore this thing would be inclusive of that. That's the argument.
Yeah,
Yeah. So why do you think that was the intention behind this statement being made?
because it was made in a fighting context, and it was showcase the ability being used against an enemy, which is attributed to the word obstacle.
Well, I don't think it is really relevant if it's said in a fighting context, because obviously it's going to be in reference to something combative. But I'm asking, why can the intention here, obviously categorically being in reference to something combative, be in reference to something hypothetically that could have happened under different circumstances? To me, it seems like, let's say we take this statement to be true, this would be in reference to people of the current standing that he would deem as an obstacle, not in reference to somebody who was on his side that he has no reason to deem as an obstacle. That's under the hypothetical that I take the statement to be true, though.
Wait, so you're saying that under the fighting context, like obstacle would be attributed to like who exactly?
Well, under the fighting context, obstacle seems to be in reference to, or more reasonably, in reference to somebody that he actually deems as an enemy at the current point in time. So I don't think this would be inclusive of somebody he deems as an ally, that being Garp.
But like if they're fighting each other, you do agree that Akainu would be like bloodlust against them or no?
Well,
Because that's like
that's in question, right? So whether or not this statement would encompass something hypothetical, like a situation where somebody who was once perceived as an ally can turn to an enemy, rather than this just being a reference to somebody he's currently deeming as an obstacle.
yeah, I'm saying like Akainu would likely go into the fight bloodlusted because even if I like if even for Garb like usually on his side as a marine, we know Akainu can like disagree with other marines ideologies and whatever they do like Kuzan and like yeah Kuzan mostly and Kizar like sometimes, but yeah, and he doesn't just like lash out on them. The only time he actually like fights marines is when he wants to kill them. Like for example, the random marine and still marine for dark, he just like completely like one shots them because he went like contradictory like to his ideology. So if in
Well,
this
I think
hypothetical he's fighting Garp, then that would insinuate him being bloodlusted because that would be consistent with his character.
Well, I think you're kind of just repeating the claim, right? Even in that example that you've given about this guy, or I kind of one-shotting a character, just because it can be the case that he can be so strong and there's a disparity between him and another character's strength to which he can one-shot him, doesn't mean that the statement holds true. And I'm saying, even if a statement is made like this, obstacle could just be in reference to who he deems an obstacle at the time, as in this series. So, for example, I can say if I'm on a basketball team, right? I can say that I'm the best. Well, yeah, somebody can say that he's like better than all of his like enemies, right? In terms of like other teams. And then I could say that let's say that him and another person on his team, like I guess 1v1, that doesn't necessarily mean that just because he's now seen as an enemy, he'd be able to beat him. Rather, the statement seems to be inclusive of only people that he currently, at the moment in time when the statement is made, sees as an enemy.
Yeah, you again, no, because that's not what I like tried to present it for. As I'm saying in this hypothetical, we could like from these sets of criteria, we can deduct that Akainu would have to consider him an enemy to fight in this
Well,
like
the
hypothetical,
deduction doesn't
because
really
without it,
matter,
like
right? The
yeah, no,
deduction
because that's
doesn't
your
really
contention,
matter
right?
because you can draw
You
a conclusion from this deduction, that being that if he's in a fight with this person, then necessarily he'd see him as an obstacle. But that doesn't mean the statement of him using this, like the statement of an obstacle within itself, is inclusive of him. I'm saying,
okay, I
yeah,
see.
it's like I think the statement is only going to be in reference to somebody perceived as an enemy when the statement is made, rather than somebody hypothetically in a situation to which circumstances could be different.
Okay, but you agree that the statement is made from like a kind of perception, right? Like what he considers an
A
obstacle.
kind of perception. Sure. A body can any obstacle, and sure.
Yeah, so why wouldn't that like translate to anything he considers an obstacle? I don't think that would be time
Well,
dependent.
so the statement can be an overarching statement from like a narrator perspective, but still be inclusive, or can be reducible down to a character's perspective. But I'm saying if the overarching statement within itself is the narrator statement, and what they're taking into account wouldn't be some hypothetical situation to which the situation could be different, then I don't see why the statement could be taken as being in the interpretation you're arguing for.
Yeah, because if we're arguing like purely from a kind of like perception, and let's say for the moment I did prove that he would go like likely go into this fight while considering him an obstacle. Like I see what you're saying. You're saying that this like he could consider Garp an obstacle in that moment, but that the statement doesn't necessarily account for that, right?
Well, kind of. Basically what I'm saying is, even with the narrator thing, I said that sure we can reduce it down to just being perspective based, but the statement within itself, it seems to be an overarching statement from the narrator. So the narrators, when the statement is made, it seems to just be in reference to what Akainu would deem as an obstacle in that given moment in time. It wouldn't take into account some hypothetical situation where the situation or the circumstances could be different. That being an ally to an enemy. I just don't see the connective there.
Uh huh. Well, even in that like thing, right? Do you think if they fought like wait, so I'm kind of I see what you're trying to say, but I don't see how that like attacks what I just said though.
Well, repeat what you said because I might have just misheard them.
Yeah, because I said that if the statement like accounts for Akainu's perception overall, and you kind of like agree that's overarching, but you don't like would disagree on the denotation where they like um translates to basically what you're trying to say that it wouldn't necessarily account for people that he doesn't consider an obstacle at the time of the statement being made. And
Well,
I'm saying if it's directly derived from his perception, then doesn't matter if he considers you an obstacle at the time of the statement. If he considers you an obstacle like at all, because that's one of the attributes that's being denoted to his ability, then you he would be able to like melt you.
well, that's the issue, right? So I don't disagree. Like denotatively speaking, if you want to talk about just literal language, obviously it says that any obstacle, like he can melt them. Sure, I can grant that, but the conclusion you're drawing for them doesn't seem to be sequitur, right? Just because the statement can be made during a given time, and somebody can categorically fit under the criteria of being an obstacle, that doesn't mean that this would fit within the context of any future scenario. I'm saying it can be reducible down to a kindness perception, as in if an overarching person is making this, then an obstacle, yes, I can say an obstacle could be contextualized to what a kind of deems it as at the moment. But I'm saying the statement within and of itself is an overarching thing, so it's going to be perspective based to the given moment in time that they're arguing or they're talking about. So I think when the statement is made, whoever he deems as an enemy there is what the overarching statement is in reference to. So whether or not he can, like, later down the line in this hypothetical situation, deem my character as an obstacle, that doesn't necessarily mean that he'd be able to melt my character.
I see. Well, I feel like if I respond now, that would be like my response would be kind of circular. So you want to get into your scaling?
Um, do I even have scaling? No. Oh, sure. I'll think of something real quick. Give me a second. I didn't really come into this with scaling. Give me a second.
I mean, I can give you another argument if you want because I think we kind of like we talked. I said everything I wanted to say pretty much.
Um, that's what I could. Do you? Okay. All right. So, do you think that Akainu and Aokiji are relative?
Sure.
Like in their fight, they were equal then, or like equal-ish relative. Then, obviously, with Hockey Boom, they grew to some relative or proportional extent.
Yes, totally fine.
Right. So, do you think that Garp was outclassing Aokiji in their fight?
Depends at what point when he was like wavering. Yeah, sure. But
What do you
then,
mean
we,
wavering? Who?
yeah, Kuzan's soul was said to be wavering, so like it implies the confliction.
Wait, could you show me that?
Yeah, and yeah, and like just to expand on that, when like later in the fight, Kuzan mashed Garp pretty easily. So
Yeah, you could show me that as well.
yeah, they like clashed directly. Hmm.
Well, if that's the well, we could put that off for now, but we can get on the first thing. But I don't think that necessarily means that they're going relative.
Okay, sure. Hmm. I'll just check the thing. It's like chapter 1080, fucking whatever. Hmm. Hmm. Bruh. Yo, I just busted a fat one like 10 minutes ago, bro.
That's insane. Lots of information.
Okay, buddy. Fuck. Yeah, I got the scan for them clashing, and then. Hmm, hmm. Yeah. So here's the scan, and then. Hmm. Yeah. So here's the scan for his soul wavering, and then like the colloquial definition of wavering also implies that his soul is getting weaker, pretty much. So I mean, the only definition that makes sense.
Well, under your interpretation, sure. Okay, I'll
Because
let
like
you use that.
yeah, the reason I said that is because the first definition is kind of like attributed to like more physical things. I don't think soul is like a physical thing. If that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Let me see the statement first. So, Kuzan put her body back to normal. Let's go, Kobe. Whatever, I was your mom, but I'm afraid I can't help you with any of those things, Garp. I love that about you, which is why I live for you now. I just want you to told you to live in the moment. Listen up, Keisha. Wavering is a sign of weakness. Wait, why can't wavering just be in reference? Wait, and I don't see the soul thing. So it just says wavering is a sign of weakness. And why can't wavering just be a form of hesitation? That doesn't necessarily imply that there's some undermining of physical capabilities in any regard. Rather, he just like doesn't like spring to action.
Yeah, because well, what you're saying is kind of doesn't make sense because he already like in the moment he's already gonna spring to action right now. I don't think
That's
saying
not
like
necessarily
wavering
true.
like as hesitating. I mean that would kind of actually like support my interpretation as well. Not gonna lie, because he's like not directly reacting in this moment and he's hesitating, even
Well,
physically. That would
that's,
like.
that's
Do you
confusion then.
think basically hesitating physically would imply a mental hesitation?
Well, that's what's in question. Whether or not this hesitation would imply some undermining of his physical capabilities. I'm saying that in a heat of a moment, or even in battle, you can be face to face with your opponent. You can waver in the sense that you can hesitate to perform an action. That doesn't necessarily not make sense because you're in the battle. because that happens quite often. Hesitation can literally, like I said before, just be seen as of like faltering at a given moment and not performing an action. So I don't see the issue there. That's highly possible. You could have like you could have some recollection of a past event. You could be thinking about somebody else, etc. So many things that could encompass you wavering in that given
Yeah,
moment.
we can leave
And,
that up for later. Wait, are you done?
well, what was the second thing you said?
I said that has like I basically asked you do you think hesitating physically would imply
Oh yeah,
mental
the hesitating physically.
hesitation?
I think that kind of begs the question, right? Because again, I'm asking you, why? What's the argument for why hesitation here would be undermining his physical capabilities rather than it just being a performative issue?
Yeah, yeah. 1 second. So if he's hesitating, he you brought up several examples, like for example, remembering someone, um, whatever, right? Or
Yeah,
like pretty much like the action of pausing before saying or doing something, right? Which is
yep.
like the political definition, right? So if we're going by that definition, like of physical hesitation, then I don't think that feat would be scalable at all, in my opinion, because his reaction, like his combat speed, would be nerfed because of the hesitation.
Well, I'm confused. I'm not trying to draw any argument there, that them being relative or guard being above by virtue of this situation. Like, I'm not really trying to do that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that. Oh, okay. No, I'm just saying that. In the moments that Garp did do good on Kuzan, which is like your initial stance, I think was right. In the moments that he did do good on, it's implied that Kuzan was weakened, and when he's not weakened, he's like going relative to him and stuff.
Wait, weaken in what regard? Because again, weaken is very ambiguous here, right? If we're talking about wavering, then again, I just provided an interpretation that wavering can just be a performative issue rather than some undermining in strength. And what's the argument for this statement right here being inclusive of everything that would happen later down in the fight?
Yeah, because if Kuzan shows a sign of wavering like early on, and he hesitates already, like just at the start of the fight, I think it would be like plausible just analytically to say that he would have a tendency to waver after.
Well, that isn't necessarily true. That seems to be a leap in logic, right? So I can grant that it's plausible in the sense that, um, obviously, it's something that could be the case later down the line, but that isn't an argument for why it's likely the case or there would be an instance of it being the case or consistent within his character in the fight.
Hmm.
Like performing one action doesn't mean that you have some tendency to do that same action, especially after you got punished by doing that same action.
No,
Like if,
but
for
the
example, I can let's say I run down the hallway, right? And I get caught get running down the hallway, I get in trouble. That doesn't mean that doesn't really mean that I'm gonna run down that hallway multiple different times. I don't think that tendency lies there.
Yeah, but if the reason for your hesitation is which is implied to be Garp in this situation, is still like present throughout the fight,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
and
you. Repeat
he,
yourself.
yeah, if Garp is implied to be the reason of hesitation of fighting Garp, because we see like the flashback, the chapters about that, we see that Kuzan is arguable that he even like started crying throughout the fight type shit. But I'm not gonna argue that. But pretty much just saying it's like highly implied that Garp is the reason derived for his hesitation, and if like the reason stays throughout the fight, then he has basically like a likelihood of staying with the tendency because the pretty much the precedent is still there.
Well, I think the issue right here is the correlation you're drawing between the person and every other situation that would happen after. I can grant that Garp was the reason he wavered here. I remember wavering contextually being in support of my position. That doesn't mean that every other situation where he's encountering Garp, he's gonna waver. Again, that's what's in question. It could
I
just be
think that
circumstantial
sorry,
or in reference to the dialogue that they had here. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to extrapolate to every other scenario to which they have a dialogue or even exchange in combat.
I'm not saying that you necessarily would. I'm just saying it would be a high likelihood that it would.
Wait, why?
I mean, I just kind of like explained already, but because Kuzan basically shows that he has this quality of wavering before Garp or hesitating before Garp, and if Garp is present, like within your analogy, for example, I don't think it's necessarily analogous because there's no like necessary attribute that forces you to do this the fucking like what was it running down the hallway, I think.
But there's nothing
It's
here
basically
either.
No, because I said it's probably derived from Garp. It's implied to be from Garp.
The analogy stemmed from the thing that would come after the first part. The analogy wasn't meant for the wavering issue. The analogy was meant for if you perform an action and the action is punishable by any action and response, then I don't think you would have a tendency to do that again. And you just showing, or you just repeating the same argument, just that he did it before in reference to Garb. Therefore, it's seemingly likely that he's going to do it again. Especially when I said that could just be in reference to something circumstantial to the dialogue they're having at that given moment. That doesn't necessarily mean, or yeah, using that word necessary. I'm not saying that you're saying it has to be the case or whatever. I'm just using that as a filler word for it. That doesn't like really have to be the case that it's going to extrapolate to every other instance, or that there's some consistency that you can draw from this.
Hmm. Wait, what do you think you can draw consistently from Garp, or sorry, Kuzan, basically attributing his, or the Oda pretty much attributing Kuzan's wavering to fighting Garp?
I think it's possible to draw a consistency if there's multiple instances given this moment, but it seems that you're drawing it from one instance where that could be just in reference to the dialogue they're having in that one circumstance.
Yeah, but my whole argument is pretty much just saying that if you show signs of weakness here, and he hesitates before Garp in this instance, then every feat could be disregarded with or every feat Garp got on Kuzan can be disregarded with the possibility of Kuzan wavering at that point of time.
Well,
And
that's just
I
a
don't
bit
think
of
I need a
possibility.
sorry, I don't think I need like several points of showcase for me to draw consistency necessarily.
Well, the issue with that interpretation is just that I think that's just an appeal to possibility, right? So you're saying because it's possible in one situation, therefore that consistency should lie in every situation after the fact. So we can't really say that any feat that Garp has on um Aokiji would be an actual feat by virtue of this thing could like possibly extrapolating. But again, I said that that wavering doesn't necessarily have to be within his character. It can just be circumstantial to this one given moment. So the context behind this doesn't extrapolate. Therefore, that's not going to be something that's the nature of that situation isn't going to extrapolate to every other nature. Therefore, the argument wouldn't follow.
Okay. Yeah. So wait, can you repeat the first part? I only heard the second like part of your
I
thing.
think the first part was just that I think you're appealing to possibility. You're saying
Oh yeah.
because it's okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think that's necessarily going to appeal to possibility. Like I'm just saying that, with the information that we have, um, it would be pretty reasonable to say that Kuzan could be hesitating throughout the fight. I'm not asserting that is the case, which is like appeal to possibility. Just saying that something is the case because it's like logically, epistemically, whatever possible. I don't care. That's not what I'm doing here. You seem to acknowledge that it's a possibility, like throughout, right? Or no?
Well, I acknowledge it's a possibility, but the conclusion you're drawing that this is going to be akin to the like situation every single time. Therefore, you can't draw any conclusion on one character performatively out undoing another character. That's the issue. That conclusion doesn't seem to be sequitur by virtue of it just being a possibility that can only be, or that I provided an interpretation that could only just be in reference to something in this given moment and not something that can be extrapolated. That's the issue.
But yeah, but like I'm saying, if yeah, this happened. Yeah, I think I would address that because if this happened in this giving moment because of Garp and Garp is present throughout like the other parts, then yeah, it would be like um Kuzan would likely also waver in those parts of the fight too, or
The,
at least
the issue
like
with that interpretation is you're just conflating the person with the circumstance. Again, this could just be circumstantial to a dialogue that they had in that given moment. That doesn't mean that it's
wait
akin to
why
the nature of the character that he's in reference to. So I
wait
can say, huh?
why do you think could be reference to the dialectic specifically? Because
You know what I'm
they're
saying?
just like
On
exchanging
the right,
trash
it seems
talk,
like
and
they're
Kuzan
having
seems to be
some
pretty
dialogue.
confident.
So that dialogue could influence his actions to waver. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is something that stems from the character Garp within itself. So every other situation, it seems plausible, as in probable, that this thing can happen again. That isn't sequitur. Like for example, I can say that I'm talking to a friend. A friend says something in one given moment, and that makes me mad at them there. That doesn't mean that every other situation to which we have a conversation or even engage with each other I'd have any like anger towards them. That isn't that's not sequitur.
Yeah, I think it pretty like I don't want to say absurd, but at least pretty faulty to assume it's because of the dialectic because just how of the way they exchange the words, right? It's just pretty much Kuzan confidently trash talking to Garp and Garp doing the same thing. They kind of teacher to student banter. I don't think that would necessarily draw Kuzan wavering, especially considering they do the same thing throughout the fight, even like more emotional, and we don't see Kuzan wavering necessarily. And yeah, but I already said that Oda implied that it's kind of Garp causing the thing, not the situation they're in. So it's not like the circumstance.
Wait, could you
I
just show
I
me the
derived this.
implication from the author? And also with that
Yeah.
other point that you made, I think it's very like reasonable to conclude that it's a reference to the dialogue because it says here that I love that about you, which is why I live the life I want to now. I think that that's something that he can like he's trying to resonate with him or he's giving him something important to him in that situation to which a fight is happening and Garp can see that as a situation of wavering. Therefore, he makes that comment in response. I don't really see the other interpretation that I don't see how Garp can draw the conclusion that he's wavering by virtue of no dialogue. Like, I think he would have to justify that he's able to perceive someone's wavering just by their bodily function rather than any exchange they could have verbally.
Yeah. Well, you're saying that he probably derived it from the fuck, what was it? Yeah, he probably derived it from the dialect because you want me to prove that you can possibly derive it from like the bodily indications or some shit.
Yeah, seemingly more likely by virtue of the contrary position seeming unreasonable, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you can definitely like, especially in One Piece, you can derive if someone is wavering because it's like of their hockey, and we know that hockey like exerts an aura. Because like for example, wait, what was it? Well, I'll give an example later if I need to, but pretty much, One Piece in One Piece, hockey seems to be like the indicator for your willingness and your will to fight, and your aura in general.
Wait, is that in reference to this situation? If not, then I think that's just analogous, right? So if he's, because I'm pretty sure there's a moment in time to which he switches Kizaru, not Kizaru, Aokiji, by the way, he switches his battle tactics. He goes from using his ice to using hockey when he sees that his ice isn't working. So I'm going to ask you now: is this situation where he uses this blue hole? Because I don't remember the fight too well. Was this when that switch happened or prior to the switch happening? Because if it's prior to the switch happening, that's disanalogous. If it's after, then I guess we can keep talking about that.
It was prior, but I don't think you have to have like your hockey turned on for your opponent to feel it.
Wait, why?
Yeah, because it's just like your will extravagated, and I think like it's shown in One Piece that you can feel your hockey, like your opponent's hockey, and how strong it
Well,
is.
so if it's a byproduct of your will being exerted, then it has to be exerted in some way, shape, or form. I don't see the like issue
No,
there,
but
right?
I
Because
don't think.
we see, for example, Shanks, whenever he goes on Whitebeard's ship, he says that he couldn't suppress his or his hockey, whatever you like say about it. So that means that it is possible that this thing doesn't have to seep out of your body. Therefore, I don't see why we can conclude that this person can detect something that isn't seeping out of the body.
Okay, yeah, I mean, in that instance for Shanks, I think that just you said he couldn't suppress it or he didn't
No, he
suppress
said that when I'm pretty sure there was something that stopped him from suppressing it. I'm pretty sure it was like him nervous on the ship. I don't know, whatever he said.
it. Because if he couldn't suppress it, that just means that it's constantly leaking out. They're just gonna support him interpretation.
Well, I don't think it's always going to be constant. I don't think that makes too much sense because obviously he isn't going around every single place that he goes to and knocking people out. So I think it was just the situation. And if it was a situation, then that does prove that they have control over whether or not this thing seeps out of their body. And again, you need an argument for why it can be sensed when it's not leaking out of the body or like it's not being exerted out of the body.
Yeah, because I didn't say you have to like exert it necessarily. I think it's like what I was getting to is just it's constantly going to be like um kind of around you or exerted to a degree without you exerting it. Like for example, arm hockey is the example of exertion. I don't think you have to do that for your opponent to feel like you will in something. But
Wait, so
in
you're
Shanks,
saying
yeah,
armament
sorry.
hockey is a form of exertion. So what form of hockey do you think that Garp sensed here? If you think it was Conqueror's hockey, which is the only other thing that I can say possibly has an exertion, I think you're just gonna have to prove Kizier has that.
Oh yeah, Kuzan does have
Not
conquer hockey.
Kizier, Aokiji. I'm so stupid.
Yeah,
I keep getting them mixed up.
yeah, basically, yeah. That's what I was getting to. Kuzan does have conquer hockey, unironically, and since with Shanks, you just brought up Shanks, right? He can like you say he like that's kind of just like I want to backtrack a little bit to the suppressed part, right? If he's that's the important part is the wording there. If he couldn't like suppress, I want to see the scan.
I'll
But if
find it.
he, yeah, because if he didn't like if he could suppress it like fully, then it would be like I'll go from there. But if he didn't like, if he like cannot do that in general, then yeah, that just like says that Kuzan also is pretty much just constantly leaking power, even if it's not like to an extent that says, okay, I'm gonna knock everyone around me out.
Well, again, that's another presupposition that you could justify him having Conqueror's Hockey. So you can go ahead and do that. Then I'll get the skin as well, though.
Yeah.
Um,
So, are you aware that Kuzan and Garp clashed with Conqueror's Hockey?
wait, that's what's in question. You could show me that, why that would lead to that conclusion.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
So, one second, I'll get the skin.
since, excuse me, since this is an enemy ship, I kind of made a bit. I kind of made a bit. Does anyone have the scan of him saying that he was on the ship and why he was leaking his like
Whitebeard said he
fucking
was doing
his
his hockey in full blast.
It's like post Jaya. Yeah.
something like that, whatever that. Yeah, is it
Yeah,
really?
Whitebeard said he was like showing his hockey in full blast. I think
Yeah.
Scat sent it to me. If Scat is here, he can send it again.
Bro, 90 sounds like exactly like Jacob, bro.
Oh
Don't
wow.
say that, please.
Am I tripping? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I got you though. So, uh, hmm,
Scat, you trying to be a W man and slide that skin again, bro?
yeah. So in their clash, it basically like showcases the science usually common to a Conqueror's clash.
Wait,
Like,
so these are signs that are common from the a
well,
Conqueror's Clash, or
well, pretty much like every
signs
time
that?
we see a Conqueror's clash, like I'll use Roger versus Wybird as example. Yeah, we see like the streaks and the explosion, and we see also Shanks when he attacked Kid with Conqueror's clash, he also caused an explosion. So I think it's pretty like consistent with how it's
Well,
showcased in the series.
Well, I don't think that's enough to draw the conclusion, right? So I can say that by virtue of doing specific attacks that obviously are distinct in nature, they can have a similar after effect. That doesn't necessarily mean that the attacks that made the after effects are going to be one to one. I don't think to justify your burden here, you're going to show things that make it like that are similar in terms of after effects when you can have multiple different things fulfilling that consequence.
Wait, like, what do you think? I'll send the scans by the way. I'll look for the Kid scan and the Roger scans, but pretty much like are pretty identical. And the second scan, when you see the explosion, you're saying that other attacks could have like a similar after effect. Um, you're kind of like just presupposing that. I'd like you to showcase an attack that's pretty much an explosion with black lightning coming out of it, which is usually indicated for Conqueror's hockey.
Wait, let me ask you this before we get into that. And Scat, you can slide. Okay, appreciate it, Oshi. But like the scan that you sent about like when we see the score or whatever, it having those black streaks, that I think that was from a Garp attack, right?
It was their clash, like it's like right after.
Wait, so so what you're showing, this just begs the question again. So you're showing these things, therefore you're making this claim or drawing this conclusion that this is Conqueror's hockey. You have to show me somebody who's verifiably a user of this having similar after effects to which like they have Conqueror's hockey, and then you would have to make an
Okay.
argument for why it's an essential aspect of Conqueror's hockey.
Okay. So sure. One second.
We're kind of
Uh,
bouncing around a lot of points here. Hold on.
yeah. Okay. 1 second. I got you.
Excuse me. Since the
So
Manny, your
enemy
penis is red.
ship, I kind of made a big bang.
I'll just
ASAP.
get the Rogers clash. But there's like several other clashes with Konkrasaki that showcase like the exact same thing. Hmm. One
Yeah, you can
second.
show me that.
Yeah. 1 second. 1 second. Hmm. uh. Where is it? Hmm. Uh,
Mm, 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 mm.
Air Basic Mania. What diff is it right now?
That's gay. I don't know, man. You have to ask somebody or form that conclusion yourself.
I think Gyro is low diff. Okay, buddy. Oh my god. Yeah. Here's. Never mind. Hmm. Uh. Hmm. Here's the Roger clash. Yeah. He has the same like black streaks coming out from both sides of an attack, and kind of like um an exertion of energy also after the attack. Yeah. Like which is similar because it's coming out from both sides, just like with Garp and Kuzan. So yeah. So it's like basically like energy coming out from all sides of the battle. And then I'll also use fuck. Who even conquers Clash, but I forgot. Fuck. Wait, was it Kaido and Luffy? I think. Fuck. I'll forget that. Wait, let me check. Wait, but man, you have any issues with what I said?
No, I haven't even looked at it. Give me a second.
Sure. Ah. Hmm. Is the right button? Yeah. Where is it?
All right. So what'd you send?
I just sent like
Wait.
how Rogers and Viber's clash with Conqueror's Hockey looks pretty much identical to Kuzan and Garp, and like how the energy is coming out from both sides. You see the streaks coming out from the attack from like both of the opponents, and then there's also like the big ball of energy with the lightning coming out of it after the clash. So it's like pretty much shares the same attributes as previous Conqueror's clashes. Yeah, let me get this thing down. Fuck. Yo, shut off flames, by the way.
All right. I'm back. What'd you say?
Yeah, I just said that I sent Roger and Wyber Clash, and they're pretty much showcasing the same attributes as Garp and Kuzan, which is like their energy coming out from both sides of the attack. The big ball of energy with lightning coming out of it after the clash. Pretty much pretty identical to how Garp and Kuzan's clash went
Wait,
through,
let me ask you a
which
question.
leads me
So
to
do you
conclude.
believe that the streaks of like whatever you want to call it, let's say lightning, right? Let's say the streaks of lightning that are coming from these blades, do you believe they're omnidirectional? As in if one person was able to use this attack, it would showcase these like all like the entire perimeter has these black streaks, or do you think it's only a frontward ability to which you can only see these streaks like I guess linearly towards the person doing the attack?
I think is the latter.
The latter. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, because it's kind of seeming like I'll just. Are you fine if I use the thing I sent to refer to, or do you think that's like wrong?
I mean, sure, but I kind of drew that conclusion or the ask that prodding question from the scans because I think that I don't necessarily think that you can prove that it's not omnidirectional. So I think that would just be an equal interpretation on your part. If that's the case, then I could just say that, for example, Garp was the only person who was able to utilize this by virtue of the scans you sent prior, to which we see these black streaks are just going to be in reference to Garp, not necessarily extrapolating to Kuzan.
Wait, before we go forward, can you define omnidirectional like and
Yeah,
some because I kind of
omnidirectional
missed that.
is just like a full circumference, like every direction. Because it seems like it's going in every direction in the scans that you sent, right? So I'm just asking that question. And also I think I formed this conclusion from the Garp instance. So let's say Garp does have Conqueror's Hockey. He obviously sent the attack towards the ground, and it seemed that the black strings come upwards where the attack was going downwards. So I think that my interpretation seems probable here.
Wait, because wait, which one are you referencing? Because
The
there's
one you
like two
sent
streaks. There's
above where
like
Garp
one.
has it on the floor in front of the skeleton.
Yeah, wait, because the clash is like there's the streaks are going both up and down, like from both sides.
Well, that's
And
fine in the clash. I'm
why I
saying
asked
why.
about sorry, why I asked about the scan is because with Roger specifically when it's colored, we see that um basically the streaks are coming out the swords pretty much. So I think it's more like linear than anything. Obviously, it can go like in several directions, but I think it would be like just the inclined path that he's gonna take is gonna be linear.
Well, there's a distinction between the illustration from the action lines and the actual Conqueror's hockey like blast. So the action lines in fiction are used to show the direction an attack or an action is being performed in. For example, we can see in the scan that you sent as well, the top right of the left scan. It shows that they're in a state of suspension to which their blades aren't necessarily moving, and we see kind of like the electric like wave of like the Conqueror's hockey. Then we see when they're actually in motion, those streaks turn straight. I think that's indicative of action lines. And then we see a different depiction of lines, that being the edgier, raggedy lines, which I deem to just be like those action lines for not action lines, the lightning lines, for example. So I think there's obviously an illustrative distinction.
Yo, shout out Rewind by the way if he's here. Yo, but yeah, I'd be fine with that. But in other clashes in this series, like if just like pure armament, from Conquerors, usually like Katakuri and Doflamingo. Oh, sorry, Katakuri. Yeah, Katakuri and Doflamingo against Luffy. Ulti versus Luffy and stuff. Where we see the black edgier lines. We don't see the streaks that I'm trying to attribute to the Conquerors. That's why. That's the
What
reason
do you
I
mean?
was gonna attribute to
The
after
straight
this.
ones?
Yeah, like the straight ones, like in Roger, because it's like colored. I'm gonna use that. It's like coming directly out the sword, and it's like very straight. And with um Kuzan and Garp, it's also coming out of the attacks, and it's also straight. So
Well,
I
the
can send
straight
you
is
the
again that can just be in reference to the action line. Even in the scan, we see when what's his name, Odin is running, we see the straight lines indicating an action towards that direction. We see in that same scan to the middle, like the middle part where they're flying back, we see the straight lines as well, indicating them going in a specific direction. Like I can send some more scans that indicate action lines are in reference to you can search it up as well. This is what they use to like show an action or emphasize some like course or direction to which an action is taking place. So I think if there's a distinction, and especially since we see an illustrative distinction in that same scan you sent, to which their blades are in a sense of suspension and the illustration is raggedy, then we see when they're actually performing an attack, the illustration of those lines are straight. And then we see another depiction in that same action to which it's raggedy. There's obviously a distinction that's being drawn between an action line and the actual explosion or outcome of an hockey attack. So I think if that's the case, then obviously well, we can get to that point after, but yeah, I think there's a
well,
distinction there.
yeah. Well, I can't just like address that. I think
Yeah.
before the Odin, like sorry, during the Odin scan, it's a different line. It's like more in the background. It's also colored differently. And the reason I'm disregarding that possibility is because, like I said, Oda doesn't seem to depict clashes like that. Like generally speaking, with
Wait,
even with Adria lines, I can
I see.
send you the scans if you want.
You can send scans of like that, but with the first thing, um that the where the action lines are doesn't matter, right? So an action line, like I said before, shows or depicts or emphasizes an action. If it's showing people running in a general direction, I don't see an issue with the action line showing the background to emphasize that they're going in a direct direction. In the case of the blades, that's the emphasis of the focal point of the scan. The blades are going in the specific direction, so the action lines are directed towards the blades. Um, like I literally seen another example of the Doflamingo versus Luffy fight. There was also action lines in that as well, in the distinction between the actual hockey class, but I can
Yo,
get
is
that for
this
you
how
as
we
well.
doing?
Yo,
Huh?
yeah, Manny. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, you saying there's no difference between where's the action lines are placed. That's kind of like presupposing that the things in the scan are already action lines. The reason I brought up the placement is because during the clash with the like immediately see them not in the background, more as coming out of the attack, which is like you said. There's also examples of the action lines like coming out of different places, right? Because I would like to see that if that's the case.
Yeah, so in the example I would gave, like even the manga panel, the visual depiction between the action lines directed towards them, they're moving their legs, seem to be straight, and then we see the jaggedy lines from the hockey attack from Doflamingo and Luffy. Then when we see Luffy, Doflamingo putting his leg down on Luffy, we see the action lines directed downwards. So obviously, action lines don't always have to be in the same respects to which they are shown. That doesn't mean that you can't draw the conclusion that action lines are their purpose is to show or emphasize a specific action or the focal point of the scan. And I can also send us like a link that shows or proves that what action lines even are in like anime.
No, I'm fine with like the general definition of action lines because we don't seem to disagree there. But I'm just drawing the distinction how it's like generally placed. Can you send me the flamingo thing?
Yeah, I sent both of the scans in scans chat. I can
Yeah.
find some more as well to which the action lines are placed in a different direction, but they still emphasize the same idea. Whatever they're trying to emphasize in the scan is what the action lines are going to be in reference to. I can also show the Whitebeard and Shanks clash as well. Like
Yeah, one
action lines
second.
always
I
have to
got
be placed in the same regards.
you. Well, I was just getting the scan. Sorry, I'll look at the scan shot. One sec. Mm. Well, might as well send the Doflamingo scan while we're at it, right? So, just saying this is like their clash, one of their clashes.
Yeah, I showed
Kind
two
of like,
different of the same.
yeah, like there seems to be like no action lines, or sorry, no like conquer streaks, right? But
What do
in this one, it's a
you?
little different because it's like also besides the colored version, which I said there's like kind of already a distinction drawn between the streaks between Wybird and Roger, and between the color and the like oh sorry in coloring between the Odin action lines and that, but and here just like directly you see that these lines are like drawn with less boldness than the Kuzan lines, because one is like super bold and like super on the page, and the other one is just kind of like in the background, um very gray, very shady, just pretty much it's there to paint a picture, but it doesn't really stick out to the eye, if that makes sense. So there's
Wait,
like a
that's not
distinction in how
relevant,
it's
right?
drawn.
So
Yeah, it is
action
relevant.
lines don't necessarily have to be the focal point. What they do is emphasize the focal point of the scan. And I'd like you to repeat the first thing because I didn't necessarily hear what you said. But even in the scan you sent now with the Doflamingo thing, we see instances of action lines being used as well. The top right of that scan, to which that one guy with the orange hair, I forgot his yellow hair, I forgot his name, but we see the action lines directed towards the place he's looking at or he's trying to go. Then we also see the action lines in the middle part of the top scan, to which we see the rumble falling down. That's trying to emphasize that action. So I'm saying if we know that it's consistent within this series or any other mode of fiction to which anime can be considered, we can say that in the video on the depictions we've shown, there's obviously a distinction between how action lines are depicted, which are straight and directed, and the jaggedy line that we see from a conqueror's clash, to which characters are doing this performative action. So there's a distinction there.
Okay, yeah. Well, for the first part, I'm not necessarily like trying to say anything about the use of the action lines. I'm just saying I'm just drawing a distinction between how it's like portrayed and how Oda uses these two things differently with the shading, and how he chooses to draw these things because of how both he portrays one type of attack, or sorry, one type of line, which is the streak I'm referencing, and the scans with Kuzan and Garp and Roger and Wybeard, and the general action line, which is like more gray and stuff. But for what did you say for the second part? Sorry, I forgot.
Second part, I said, even in your scan, I think that justifies my position by virtue of it showing action lines, different action
Oh yeah.
lines, for specific actions.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's like no. Yeah, I'm fine with these being action lines. I'm just saying like within the clash, there's no streaks coming out. Like even if you want to say there's like the impact and whatever, but it's, like you cannot say it's the same thing because there's nothing as bold as streaks coming out as Garp and Kuzan, I think.
I think
So
there's some confusion though. Like when it comes to the usage of action lines, I think what your argument presupposes is just that the way to which the action lines are drawn has to be consistent for them to be in reference to something distinct from an actual action like taking place. I'm saying it doesn't matter how dark he shades it. It doesn't matter how light he shades it. It doesn't even matter if they're shading it at all. As long as an action line emphasizes a specific course of action that's being taken, then it's still an action line. And if those action lines depict something or are drawn differently than the actual action being taken place, then obviously there's a visual depiction, a distinction that is drawn from the two things. So therefore you can't correlate the two. If that's the case, then yeah, piggybacking off, well, we haven't gotten back to that point yet, but I think we've been arguing about this for like a while now. You want to just move on?
well, I'll respond, and yeah, I want to move on as well. But uh, I'm not like sure. Obviously, Oda can do whatever the fuck he wants with his manga, but I'm just saying it's just based off how consistently we see him draw the said action lines, which we agree are the action lines, like with Oda, Doflamingo, and the instance and stuff. It would be just expected of him, like analytically purely, to draw it because he has a tendency to draw it like that. And for him to switch up the art style, just like suddenly in the chapter, portray it completely different way. You would agree that would kind of be misleading towards readers, especially considering we also see these action lines in the chapter directly, but they're drawn like completely differently.
But
So
no, I don't. I don't think that him switching up the way to which he draws the action lines is relevant or like would provide any incoherency towards how you interpret the anime. We if we see that if you grant to all the situations that I've provided or the majority of the situations I've provided, which to your own admission said that they were action lines, then we can literally see visually that there's a distinction between how they're drawn consistently. In the Doflamingo scans, we see they're really big and shaded. In the second Doflamingo scan, we see they're more thin and more directed. Then in the Shank scan, we see they're more thicker. Then in the scan you said at the bottom, we see in some instances they're just straight one lines, and then in some that there's multiple lines going in that same direction. And even in the scan above, with where was it at? Like with the Garp thing, like those are even like those are also multiple different lines. So I think even if he changes up how he draws it, there's not going to be a distinction between what makes an action line and what makes an actual hockey attack and hockey attack. It's still going to be a distinction between how they're drawn visually. And just because it's inconsistent, how he draws action lines does not make the inconsistency that I'm trying to draw from the distinction inconsistent.
okay, I mean, I think I already addressed that, not gonna lie. So what point do we want to move on to?
We can go back to whether or not this omnidirectional like visual depiction of hockey means that it's two people performing the action rather than just one. And we can, like what I talked about, I brought up was the Garp thing. If we know that his attack was directed towards the ground and we see those same hockey lines directed towards the air, then obviously, or well, I think it's more reasonable to conclude that even one person who's performing this action would allow for an omnidirectional after effect.
Why?
I'll just explain. So if it's one person performing the feat, that being Garp punching towards the ground, and then we see obviously if you to your own like what your position was is that it's a linear fashion directed towards the position which he is attacking or a person is attacking. I'm saying if he attacked towards the ground and the hockey line still showed upwards, then I think it's reasonable to conclude that the action lines are omnidirectional rather than focus on the specific course of action that somebody is taking.
Oh no, no. I just no. I defined the action lines to be coming out the like attack
No, no,
with the
not the action
attacker.
line. I'm talking about the hockey. The
Oh,
hockey.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I started saying action lines as well, but yeah, the streaks I'm referencing, I kind of like established them to be coming out directly from the user, like kind of like opposite of the direction they're going. Like even in Roderick's case, when he's going up, is going down. So it's like it seems to be a consistency drawn.
No, but what I asked you before was because it seems like maybe now, unless I just misinterpret what you're saying, it seems kind of like backtracking. So I asked you prior, do you believe that whenever somebody's performing this action, the hockey lines would be directed towards what they're performing the action to, or do you believe that they're omnidirectional? You said the latter. Latter was, or no, I switched those two up, but you said the latter. The latter was in reference to it being focused in the direction to which somebody is partaking in an action. Therefore, it wouldn't be omnidirectional in every instance. I just showed you an instance of somebody performing it in the same way that your interpretation would imply, and the action line still going in the opposite direction. Therefore, I think the other interpretation seems more reasonable.
Well, no, direct. Just to clarify, direct. What I meant by agreeing with the latter is just saying that uh basically it would be consistent with how it's saying, like it would be shown as a straight line going in line with the character, not necessarily like forwards with the characters and like in front of their movement, whatever. It's just like gonna be in line with their attack. And what do you think? Supposed to interpretation again. Sorry, I kind of missed that.
I'm kind of confused on what you meant by that. Would you just repeat yourself after? But what it supports my interpretation is just that I provided two instances. One where the hockey streaks would be directed towards wherever they're performing the action, and the other interpretation was just that it's omnidirectional as in every course of action. My interpretation is backed up by virtue of Garp performing an action towards the ground and the hockey streak still going upwards in the opposite direction to which he focused the attack. Therefore, I think it's more reasonable to conclude that it seems to be an omnidirectional attack, even with one person performing the attack. So therefore, trying to draw any correlation between an omnidirectional depiction of these hockey lines and two characters seems to be non sequitur when that same action can be performed by somebody one person.
Okay. Well, yeah. For Garp, I kind of like missed that part. His lines aren't going like going up and down in whatever direction. They're going like the streaks are going strictly like in the down rightwards direction. and then the lightning is going upwards. I think these two like are different things. It's
What are you
like
talking
fine
about?
for them to go
Streaks? Are you
differently.
still talking about the action lines?
Well, yeah, streaks.
Well, that's not what I'm in reference. So the I'm talking about the streaks of hockey. Remember, we provided a distinction between the action lines and the streaks of hockey. Because remember, your original claim was just that we see these hockey lines consistent within people who can use hockey. It's going in every direction. Therefore, you're trying to draw the conclusion that both of these people are Conquerors hockey users. I'm saying that same omnidirectional visual depiction of hockey lines can be solely from one person performing an action. I think that's seemingly more plausible by virtue of one person performing an action, and the action line still pointed towards the opposite way to which they fired the attack. Because I provided two dichotomous situations: one where the hockey lines are in reference to a specific targeted focus, the other where they're in every direction. The first interpretation was just debunked by the scan that I sent. Therefore, I think the second interpretation seems to be more reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I don't really care if you like referencing the Black Lightning because I agree that it can go like in different ways. My whole thing was that like it's about the black streaks, and I think before we established that there's a distinction between black streaks, like the lightning, oh sorry, conquer streaks, and action lines in general because of the coloring of the manga, right? I think we kind of agreed on that. But even if you want to say we didn't, like, um,
No.
we kind of well, I seem to have like recollected as we did, so I'm not sure.
But that's what I said. I said we did draw a distinction between the action lines and the hockey streaks. What I'm saying is, because I don't see how anything you said right there was too relevant. Because what I'm saying is, if you grant that I'm saying that these hockey streaks can come in any direction as an omnidirectional from one person performing the action, then the conclusion you're drawing that Aokiji has conquers hockey by virtue of him performing this clash with Garp, and we see the omnidirectional depiction of hockey clashes, that is non sequitur because that same action can be performed by solely one person, that being Garp.
Well, I kind of like, I mean, yeah, I kind of like that in reference to the streaks specifically, but lightning, I'm fine with that. I mean, you want to say that? I mean, for me to say something like that progress the point, we kind of have to backtrack. So I would prefer to move on from the point completely.
But that's fine. I'm so confused on what you keep bringing up streaks for, because the distinction I've already provided a distinction between what streaks are meant to focus on and what the actual action taking place is. If the action lines are supposed to be in reference to emphasizing an action, that means they're like distinct from the action. There's a disjunct there. But if the action within and of itself has hockey lines, then that's what's in reference to the action, while one can be directed towards an action. So there's a distinction. So if you're trying to draw the correlation between Aokiji having Conqueror's hockey by virtue of the actual action, not the things pointed towards the action, then that's non sequitur if you grant my position. But if you don't grant my position, then I don't think you have a position by virtue of the situations I've presented being dichotomous, and the first one was just contradicted. So I think it's just proof via negation.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we can move on if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't bring up strengths, but I don't know. I feel like yeah, we can move on. I don't think I need to say anything else. Now, I think we kind of talked about everything we could talk about.
Um, so I think the only other thing that we can talk about is whether or not Garp outperformed Aokiji in that fight, excluding the wavering thing. But whether or not that goes through doesn't really matter in reference to what I'm saying. So I think what your argument granted prior was just that you granted that there was multiple instances to which Garp outperformed Kizaru. You just don't think you can draw some scaling from that by virtue of the wavering thing being consistent in every other scenario, right?
Yeah, I think I said multiple, but though to be honest, the only one I remember where Garpar performed them is the blue hole, but I'm not sure you can like actually no. He also blitzed him that one time, but I think that was off guard. So yeah, I don't think like it's just more consistent that more on the relative
Wait.
side
Off
and
guard
present
as
stronger.
in he was wavering, or off guard as in somebody else took Aokiji's attention?
Oh yeah, it's like in the instance where Garp was down and Kuzan like he was kind of taking like on the winning side already, and Garb just got up and like she just ran at him. Like we see how Kuzan like visibly surprised. That's why I'm saying
Why
like he
can't
was
that
outgunned.
surprise just be by virtue of him not expecting him to get up, rather than, or as in him thinking that his attack actually landed, rather than him being caught off guard in the sense that he wasn't able to physically react.
Well, I'm saying that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's not like in reference to him not being able to react. Like that's not what an off guard is. He's still like he's off guard because like you said, um he expected Garp not to like get up and stuff because he thought his attack like landing blow pretty much and ended the fight.
Well, okay, so if there's no disagreement that it doesn't undermine his capabilities in terms of reaction and like his speed or strength, then it isn't relevant. So,
No, it does. No, it does. It does. It does. Because I'm saying if he was off guard, then it's not like scalable to full power cooldown because his
well, not scalable. Remember, I asked the question before. So it being wavering, whether or not it wavering actually has any impact on somebody's physical or reaction capabilities is what's in question. If wavering can just be a momentary thing that only is in contextually supported towards that situation, then that wouldn't extrapolate to every other situation. So if you don't win that point, then this doesn't really matter.
no, no,
But if you
no. I'm not talking about like sorry. There seems to be confusion because I'm not bringing up like a wavering point. It's like the wavering does not seems to be like. Well, I can send you the scan actually because yeah, I'll send you the scan. I'm referencing to when like Kuzan seemed like a pussy. He seemed scared as fuck against Garp, and I'm saying it was like because of the context that was behind it, where Garp got up and actually attacked him, where Kuzan thought he was basically down. And the reason I'm saying it was like it would not skill is because if you're off guard, if you're not expected to react, then you wouldn't be able to react as fast as you would normally be
Well, that's
because
what's in question, right? So I
yeah.
think I can be surprised that somebody is able to get up from an attack to which I did towards them. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not fully on guard towards anything that they could possibly do in terms of attacking me back. I don't see how that interpretation you're drawing that interpretation.
Wait, well, I'll first define off guard and on guard. Are you fine with on guard being when you like fully capable of utilizing your like kit and defensive and offensive whatever? Pretty much you're
Yeah,
just fully in
sure.
battle.
But I think
Yeah,
this is redundant because this is presupposing that this actually had any stunt on how he was able to react. But you can continue.
yeah, because like you agree that Kuzan was off guard, right?
In the sense that you're trying to draw the conclusion from, no, because obviously I can grant that off guard means that you're not like fully aware to which you can react in a situation that happens is by virtue of you being off guard in that situation and that you not being able to react, something taking your attention, etc. But I'm saying I can agree to that. That doesn't mean that I agree to what you're trying to argue, because again, that presupposes that your situation falls under the criteria of which I could agree. So I'm saying even if he's surprised that he got up from an attack to which he thought he would probably be down from, why does that necessarily mean that his attention was taken away, his reactions or perception speed went down to which he's not able to react to an attack rather than just getting speed blitzed?
Yeah, because if he thought, yeah, kind of like explained this before, you kind of like went over that, right? Uh, when he went down and Kuzan thought he like lost, or sorry, Garp lost, right? Like that would you sorry, what am I trying to say? Basically, he was already out of the battle. He thought the battle ended, so it would be natural for him to let his guard down.
No,
Especially
I don't
considering
think that's
Garp was the
true at all.
biggest threat.
I don't
Why
think that's
not?
true at all. I think even if somebody wasn't like the biggest threat, there's no reason for you in the midst of battle to which the entire island is at stake for you to let down your guard. I don't think that seems reasonable, or you can draw that conclusion at all. I think that's pretty absurd. Like I can say that, for example, if I'm playing a video game, if I defeat the final boss, that doesn't necessarily mean that the game is finally over and I can completely like just drop my controller. Obviously, or it's reasonable to conclude that there's going to be something that happens after the boss to which that could try to take me off guard, etc. So I'm still going to be on guard, especially to which a battle scenario is still in place.
I'm fine with the analogy as long as you can assert that Kuzan knew or thought about someone who could like pose any possible threat to him because we
It
know
doesn't
that
matter.
the other sword agents that were there on the island, which are presumably the only Marines in general on the island because like it's kind of a secret operation. One of them was already kind of like noted by Kuzan and he perceived them as like kind of like inferior and he knows Garp is their superior and they just like went like an extreme div battle with Garp. So, with that in mind, I don't think he would be able to. Sorry, he wouldn't be posing of them as someone who is threatening of him. So therefore, it's like very possible and even plausible that he let his guard down because it's like it's not a threat to him anymore.
Well, I don't think that makes sense for like a seasoned warrior, right? Someone who obviously has a lot of battle experience. Even if you accounted for one person that's obviously out of the battle, let's say hypothetically that is true, I can grant that. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's nobody else who could possibly pose a threat to him that can come from behind him, etc. So I don't think, especially as somebody who is seasoned in combat, would make the decision to lower their guard completely, even if the main course is down or presumably down. Again, that seems absurd. That I think that contradicts anything that would be consistent of somebody who's a seasoned warrior in a fight.
Wait, it contradicts because it's just like it's possible that someone could still pose a threat to you.
Yeah, like I think that's kind of what's always associated with these people. They always say, or I think it's common within these like different modes of fiction to where somebody's combat capable. They always say never let your guard down. You know what I'm saying? Anything could possibly happen. If you're aware, if you're in a battlefield, literally any situation can happen to which you can possibly get injured, harmed, etc. You never let your guard down. I think that's absurd to conclude that he would possibly do that just because the biggest threat is out of the way. Even with the game analogy, something could possibly come to which it could impede on your success. Therefore, it's unreasonable to say that these people let off their guard, even if the big bad wolf guy is down. But
Yeah,
if we're gonna go
but
in
I feel like that's already kind of like disregarding the thing I said before, where Kuzan doesn't seem to consider these guys a threat, as like with the fact that he knows with one of their comrades, and like if these are the only guys on the island, then like I don't see why you're like kind of just assuming that Kuzan would assume these guys as a threat or a
That
possible
just begs
threat
the
to him.
question, though. That begs the question of whether or not this is like actually a notif. And also, I already addressed this. I said even if the biggest and baddest wolf is down, even in the game example, that doesn't mean that there could be smaller mobs to which it can impede on your success. Therefore, you would not let your guard down. Letting your guard down doesn't mean that or which I think what you think letting your guard down means is somebody who isn't as strong as the big bad guy. You wouldn't try or go all out. That isn't what letting your guard down means. Letting your guard down means you're completely out of a scenario to which you could possibly defend yourself in any possible case. Even if somebody isn't as big as a threat as Garp, it doesn't mean that they couldn't pose a threat to him, to which he would still have his guard up. And again, with the seasoned warrior thing, I think that contradicts anything that's akin to somebody who's a warrior in battle, knowing that anything can happen in battle that could impede on their success.
Oh
But if we keep
yeah,
going in circles, we could just move on from this. I think this is probably the last point.
I should be, but yeah. Well, I don't think I'm presupposing anything there, like with the notified, because just for clearance, I'm referencing when like the direct start of the fight when he throws the girl in the Marines. Like he kind of like just blitzed and froze her without killing her, and it was like right in front of Garp. I don't think he used any real effort for that. He knew that just based off that showcase, it wouldn't be like a capable combatant.
Well, you
But
said no different reference to Garb, not the girl. So if you're talking about the girl, then that's not really relevant because
no, it is relevant because if Garp, presumably by his assumption, Garp being out of the battle and the only Marines other than Garp on the island are like um represented by this girl who like gets like raped by Kuzan, no diff, then yeah, he wouldn't be considered them of a threat.
wait, but okay, so that just presupposes that the situation that they could have used to come up in the Marines are the same. Even if he no diff, hypothetically speaking, this one girl, that doesn't mean that somebody who could have hypothetically trained to a higher degree couldn't possibly pose him a threat. I'm pretty sure he's knowledgeable on Kobe that was taken under Garp's wing. He trains consistently. He literally said at the beginning of the fight, "Are you going to take or pick your new apprentice over your old student?" Something like that. So he's aware that Kobe has a higher standard of training than these other people. And even if Kobe was in shackles or whatever or captured, that doesn't mean that it is impossible for him to still do something effective in this fight. So I think just because he did that to one person, that doesn't mean that he would have that same mindset for somebody else who could possibly be of higher skill or a bigger combative threat towards him. And again, even already addressed this, even somebody who doesn't really pose a threat doesn't mean that they aren't somebody or they are somebody you should let your guard down around. That's unreasonable for a seasoned warrior because literally anything can happen. People can be like what do you call it? People can be conniving, smart, like, and even if they don't present some big bad presence, that doesn't mean that they're not a threat. But yeah, we can. I think that's like we're just going in circles.
Yeah, I mean I'm fine with ending here. Well, okay, you can end direct.
Yeah, that
Uh
was a great debate, bro. That was good. That was
yeah,
solid.